we on?
And ready.
Okay.
It's preparing the live stream.
That's okay. Technology is our friend sometimes and sometimes not, so we are perfect.
And go.
Wonderful. Hello, my name is Crystal Cornelius, Executive Director, First Nations Awista Corporation. And first and foremost, I really want to thank each and every one of you, our native CDFIs, our partners, investors, new entrants into the field that are curious about Indian country and how to really make a deep impact with financial investments into our industry, for taking the time the last 3 days to join us for our 5th annual Capital Access Convening for Native CDFIs. As we found and we see just within the globe and our own nation, we've had to pivot very quickly. So I think one of the sorry spots within Awista and for all of us as well, we really find these venues so incredibly important, not only for networking, but building deep relationships with each other. And I can say on behalf of Awista and our staff, and a lot of our other Native CDFI partners and friends, we really miss seeing your face this year live. It was so nice to see you on video. Thank you all who have participated in the wonderful provision of panels. Your expertise and the deep impact that you're making within your communities is just extraordinary. And especially in this time of COVID, I'd like to issue a prayer for each one of your families, health and safety, and more so for us being able to find our balance and our joy in these times of uncertainty. I know that happens to be far and fleeting for many of us, and we're so scared for our communities, the economic downturn and what that looks like. But I think one thing that resounds just within our communities, within our souls, and within the steps that we walk in regards to really honoring our ancestors, we are resilient. I have no doubt that we will make it through this as a nation, as Indian country, as we have on so many measures. It's going to be a tougher road to do that, but our native CDFIs and the provisions of technical assistance capital, you are shining lights in the beacon of such uncertainty now, such ambiguity. And my heart just goes out to your tenacity, to the care and commitment for your communities. We've been really fortunate as Awista to be able to have continued contact with our lone clientele via Zoom meetings, and really hearing the touching stories of what each and every one of you are doing to assist all of your target market at this juncture is beyond incredible, doesn't cease to amaze us, but for your very presence, thank you so very much. So within our closing plenary, I need more coffee today. I'm going to be very pleased in a moment to introduce and speak more with Lisa Minsa as we do a final closing here, and I'll give a broader explanation to what we'll be speaking about in regards to our wonderful director, CEO of OFN, Miss Minsa. Again, I'd like to thank you for the participation and just give a couple little reminders to next year. We don't know what that will look like, but save the date for your calendar. Next June, our 6th annual Capital Access Convening for Native CDFIs will be held in Missoula, Montana. So we're very excited for that. And also on a separate note, Awista, within the next week, we'll be sending out a national survey really to address housing needs and demands within Indian country. So I know you are probably being inundated with surveys from, tens of 20s of organizations, but if you could just keep apprised of that and be able to fill that out and send it back, that would be incredibly beneficial. So thank you so much. And last but not least, I would like to thank all of our partners, our funders. Northwest Area Foundation has been incredibly wonderful as a partner and supportive of Awista, of our native CDFIs, and really is the pillar of foundations that are looking at marginalized communities and really walk the walk and talk the talk. So as always, incredibly thankful for your presence and for your continued support of our communities. So while, and I always forget to do this, and I'm not going to do it this year. This Capital Access Convening and having to maneuver everything online. We've had a couple glitches in regards to technology, but it's gone pretty well. Could not have been possible without Team Awista, and I know that you have seen, yes, applaud for our team. You all have done an incredible job of getting this up and running. We had to change so many of our internal dynamics and what sessions look like, so I couldn't ask for a more dedicated and wonderful staff. So all of your hard work, please know that I and our industry is so appreciative. You really rocked this 3-day convening on an online venue, and words can't express. You all are worth your weight in gold. So as we get into talking with Lisa, so I'd like to make an introduction to Ms. Lisa Mensah. She is the CEO of OFN. I have had the privilege the last 6 years, 2 terms, to serve on the board of OFN. So that, in my mind, has really been an incredible journey just within my own professional development, having the opportunity to really have a voice for Native communities and what that looks like within a larger context of our industry. And to be completely honest, I didn't think the first time that I ran for the board there was any chance in the world I would get on. So we're like, okay, let's try, let's get up there, give that big scary speech and see what happens. And I was, I think, more surprised than anybody else when it came out with final nominations. I kind of felt the same way the second term and was voted in again. But what I have to say, and what I really learned in this regard, I think one of the greatest strengths that we see as a Native CDFI industry, how intricately we're connected just within our relationships. If we have a problem with something, or we want to develop a new loan product, and we know another CDFI that has done so, there is so much network and sharing of information kind of underground in these regards, and we don't look at ourselves as competitors, and I don't think we ever have. And that's been something that's been incredibly powerful, I think, for our industry. But I found the same thing with the national industry. So the first 3 years sitting on the board, OFN was going through a transitional change, and maneuvering through that. But I was a little bit terrified, in all honesty. I'm sitting on a board, and at that point in time, we're an $8 million organization, and I'm sitting with folks with balance sheets of like upwards towards $1 billion. So part of me is like, oh my goodness, a lot of complex, financial measures in which they're providing in their services, we don't necessarily have great experience with. So bond guarantee program, I just got $100 million. I got an allocation of new market tax credits of, another $100 million. So looking at these junctures, but the way in which I found the governance and being able to develop these larger relationships, the larger industry really operates very much on the same measure we do. So if we're looking at scaling, okay, we want to be able to create a $15 million capital pool for secondary market access for housing endeavors. So many individuals come in and are able to give us very sound advice. They've done similar models. So I think as an industry itself, we have over 1,100 CDFIs within the nation, 69 certified Native CDFIs, and I'd say another 20, 25 emerging. We're all a very special breed of lenders, and I think we're a breed of lenders with a heart. We're a breed of lenders that have deep impact and relationship with our communities, which is so much different from what we normally see from transactional measures going back and forth, whether that be larger investment types or conventional type institutions. So with that, I've really found our experience and our honor to be First Nations Awista. The presence on the OFN board has really taught us a lot, and I'd like to think we were able to give valuable feedback just in regards to smaller communities that didn't necessarily have a voice. So we always kept that in our mind when we're talking through different parameters or objectives on what we're trying to do, change, and create opportunity for all. And that's essentially where we are as an industry. We are the stopgap between predatory lenders and hope to maneuver our clientele in and upwards into a financial system where they have full participation and have the ability to access capital in measures that are meaningful to them, not only in a cultural manner that respect their individual dreams and aspirations, and provide a ladder to do so. So with that, I have had the honor of knowing Lisa Minsa as she worked in her position at USDA and also as the CEO of OFN. And I really find her passion and her tenacity in regards to really being that individual that can speak up for the little guy, can speak up for those communities that haven't necessarily found a voice. I have to say we are so appreciative as an industry for those measures on behalf of Native communities, Black communities, Latino X communities, any community of marginalized of color. We know that we have different challenges in regards to other organizations, or our communities basically have different challenges, whether that be the rural state that we're in. A lot of our reservation communities are in persistent poverty areas, and really trying to coalesce as an industry what that looks like. And Lisa has been a wonderful steward of rising those voices of extreme policy measures. Her team is wonderful on keeping us apprised. I do have to say, internally, we have loved, Lisa, the OFN COVID responses and webinars that you continue to provide, and they have been so incredibly beneficial and translate into our operations, into our Native CDFI operations. So I have to say, those measures you have really made accessible to all levels of organizations. So our gratitude with that. And I'd like to give you a chance to talk a little bit about yourself, OFN, Native CDFIs, and be able to give greetings to our participants that we have here today.
Oh, Crystal, thank you. It's absolutely a joy. I miss the hugs. I miss being in Hawaii. I wore my shirt from last year. I really miss being in Portland, Oregon, where I was supposed to be with you all. That was my hometown. But I just have to give a shout out to Team Oista and to Crystal. Crystal is one of my heroes. She arrived in my first office with my own little smudge stick. When I came in, she said, just start fresh. And so I so appreciate that. And Crystal, we do have these term limits on the OFN board, and Crystal has served hard and long and with distinction for 6 years. So we need somebody from the broader community to come and join us again. So be thinking about that. That's a shameless plug to please consider running for the board, and call Crystal if you want to know more about this opportunity. So honestly, how lovely. And I know it's been rough to be on all of these virtual things. So for the many, many participants that I see logged in to Oista, good afternoon. So glad you're sticking with us to the bitter end. And I just want to say what a privilege it is to be here. I got a chance last year to tell you all a little about myself, and I wanted to reflect a little bit on where I come from, and then what I think is our moment of CDFIs in this country. And then I hope Crystal and I will get a chance to dialogue a little bit, so I won't just blather on forever, Crystal and team. But I was thinking about why I always get so excited to join Team Oista and our Native convenings. And I think that I come from a culture of elders. Many of you know that I have an African father from Ghana. And I think I've been hopelessly prayed into this role. I was thinking about what happened when I was Undersecretary of Agriculture for Obama. And I was on one of my big site visits, and I saw 37 states in the 2 years that I was able to serve, and had to just see so many things. But I think it was in one of my trips, I was in North Dakota, and one of my state directors said, would you be open to a blessing? And I said, sure, I'm open to a blessing. And they pulled the car off the road, and lo and behold, there is a Native elder and singer who comes and gives me the most beautiful blessing. This is like, you pull off the road, somebody shows up with a flute and gives a blessing. And I felt like, oh man, I am not just here running around for Lisa or Obama. I am being caught into some bigger work. You know, the beautiful communities that that make up America need fighters and need people who have experienced the beauty of our country and its true diversity. And, you know, so I don't exactly know the language that I got prayed for in this, but I think it was pretty powerful. And it kept happening to me. I was at the Lummi Reservation, and you know, when those grandmothers join you and put that blanket around you and say you're here for a reason, and you don't have a choice. I felt very much that when I am in Native communities, I feel deeply the pull and the call to work for the greater justice. I have had the privilege of an amazing education and amazing work experiences, and now I get to sit here and lead the nation's largest CDFI network, or Opportunity Finance Network. And it's work that I used to do when I was at the Ford Foundation 30 years ago. So for me, this is such a privilege to be back in this community and to be fighting for what I believe is a powerful set of institutions to push capital where it is hard to go. And I've been stuck with my 20-something kids. They very much feel stuck with me in our house. And so I've been explaining more about what I do. And I think the shortest phrase is that we really are trying to do something that markets don't do by themselves, that a capitalist system doesn't do by itself. Just to push lending into the corners where, yes, it can be repaid, but so much more importantly, where this money can do so much good and can bring so many people into a mainstream. And I personally think it will be hard to change the country to be completely socialist. This is the debate I have with my 20-somethings. So to me, the challenge that seems in front of us is how do we have an inclusive economy? How do we allow people to actually participate? And as an African American, seeing the deep injustice that is now revealed and more obvious, it's first obvious in the way people died from COVID, and it's second obvious in the deep-rooted, sad stories of police brutality and the underlying things that this is revealing now. Our moment is a justice moment. And I feel that we have these capital tools which are just being called out, because at the end of the day, I know there's so much complexity in our moment now. And yes, education systems need to be fixed. And yes, health systems need to be fixed. But so much of what people are eager for and seek in a more inclusive and more just way is about wealth, is about opportunity, is about a fair shot at a home or a neighborhood that works or a business that can work, frankly, a shot at thriving, at prospering. And I know that is a complicated question, but those are the things that CDFIs get up in the morning and worry about, whether you are making home loans or facilities loans or loans to create health centers or telemedicine, or whether you are a small business lender or a micro lender. That is what we do. That is what our boards sit around. And we do this very kind of mundane thing. I just spent 2 hours on our investment committee where you go through and you look at complicated financials and you look at why were there losses 2 years ago and not now, or the reverse. And, you know, it's kind of painstaking. And I think many would judge us as fairly boring. However, that is the process which allows us to put the funds where they're needed to go, and to do it in a way that the funds come back. So I've been saying, if there were ever a moment for CDFIs, it's now. And here we are at the threshold of exactly when the country needs us. We are helping after this complete economic shutdown and deep recession that appears to be with us. We have funds to help pick up businesses that have been hit so hard, not just our PPP loans, but the kind of recovery loans, the things that will be needed. Business will need to reorganize. They won't have financials that are squeaky clean. They won't have FICO scores that are squeaky clean. And we will know how to take that risk and underwrite it. So I just think that's crucial. And then here we are when the country is just reckoning with white supremacy. And we will be there to say, here is the path toward more justice. And we are the institutions who are authentically part of our communities and know how to actually lend to create opportunity. So I think that's why I say this is our moment. Couple more points, just in case you haven't heard the latest stats. Little old CDFIs joining with minority depository institutions made $7.2 billion of PPP loans in the last few months. And I know we've only got a few days left of that program, but honestly, $7.2 billion of loans. I mean, institutions like JP Morgan Chase made, $28 billion. I don't have my exact stat. But honestly, we are punching above our weight. Yeah, I think it's 28 billion for Chase. So we're an industry with 222 billion of assets under management, not trillions of assets under management. So we partnered, we scrambled. And if you weren't making a PPP loan, you were probably connecting someone to a PPP loan who could. So I just think this has been a phenomenal time. If someone had told me on January 1 that our little industry would stand up and be the bridge to crucial federal funds to essentially pump oxygen into the economy, I would have said, well, we can do a little. I don't know if I would have ever imagined that we could do $7 billion quickly and just innovatively. We didn't even have liquidity to do that. So there were lots of partners. So big moment. And I think if you're a CDFI, deep breath, back pat, this has been intense. And the creativity that our CDFIs have shown and the ability to lean in from living rooms and kitchen tables has been awesome. And I'm really, really proud. Just couldn't be prouder to be there. And my little headquarters team, 37 people that get an OFN paycheck, we're going to be there. We are fighting for this moment, for the funds, for the future. We're going to keep those webinars going. And so I just wanted to say that. I think, Crystal, before I come, I did want to give a shout out. We have 19 Native members that are part of OFN. And I know there are 69 certified and others. So I wanted to just say thank you to the members who've joined, many recently. I hear we have talks with a couple coming, but I wanted to say thank you to Chehalis Tribal Loan Fund, to Chaya Savak, to Citizen Potawatomi, to First American Capital Corporation, to First Nations, Awista, to Four Bands Community Fund, to Four Directions Development Corporation, to Lakota Federal Credit Union, and to the Lakota Funds, to the Lummi Community Development Financial Institution, to the Native 360 Fund, to NeighborWorks Montana, to the Nimiipuu Community Development Fund, to Northwest Native Development Fund, to Salt River Financial Services, to Tiwa Lending, and to the Native Loan Fund. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for trusting us, for wanting to be part, and I hope more partners will come. We're not, you don't have to drop membership anywhere else to join in, but we need a bigger tent, and I'm very thankful. So Crystal, let's chat more.
Let's do. So I have a couple of questions for you, but first, I think it's really interesting throughout our board meetings, throughout our interactions that we've been able to have the honor to accommodate with each other. One thing I always hear you say to your staff or when we're looking at overall objectives is we need to go deeper. And when you speak about that, and you speak so eloquently, I'd like to kind of touch on that, on what that means. But especially, I think from my viewpoint, Awista is also a member of the Partners for Rural Transformation. It's a relatively older group. We've been together about 4 or 5 years. Um, Previously, we had a kind of a dire name. We were the Persistent Poverty Working Group. So 6 CDFIs that really work in the deepest pockets of poverty. And of course, Indian country represented there. Got together just as a informal coalition, really to have the ability to raise our voices. We all have extreme capital demands, and we all have been experiencing poverty for generations upon generations. So this coalition really has helped us have a broader voice to gain additional resources and capital, have additional resources to build community capacity, to change policy and measures that we can see more funding coming to our communities, and really develop deep friendships and collaborations within these measures. So we've got organizations that are representing Appalachia, Mississippi Delta, the Colonias, a lot of areas in California for the migrant workers and Indian country within this regard. So with those, Lisa has been a really wonderful partner on the OFN side, really looking at policy measure efforts and capital issuance opportunities in this regard. So can you just explain to our participants that we have, when you're talking about going deeper, and is that marginalized communities, rural communities, getting capital to individuals that haven't, what does that mean to you? And it seems to be a really driving force of your leadership, because I don't know how many times I've heard it, and you always deliver in these regards. So can you just kind of explain that to our participants on your thought forms and kind of mores around going deeper in that regard, Lisa?
Yeah. I love the go deeper phrase because it's only 2 words.
Yeah.
And I think we need more rallying cries that are simpler for us to bring more partners in. And so, but it does, and I kind of like the fact that it can be interpreted a little differently. But I want to also start with the Partners for Rural Transformation and your prior name, which I think was worse, which was about persistent poverty.
Yeah, persistent poverty group.
Persistent poverty working groups, okay, but we actually don't want as much persistent poverty. So partly, I want to start, my definition with Go Deeper is a rallying cry about tackling areas of deep and persistent poverty. Has anybody, I'm frustrated, I can't see everybody's faces, but you know that map that they show the US and then they have, it's like a heat map and it shows it's red or purple or something when it says it's been a census tract that's been poor for 3 censuses, and poor means greater than 20% poverty or for over 3 decades. And that map to me has been frustratingly unchanging. The census tracts, there is some deep corners of poverty. It's always surprising to people to see these little spots, particularly in the West, and they're almost always Native communities. And then there are these urban spots that pop, and there are almost always our Black and brown communities. And then there are spots like the Central Valley in California, which are sitting next to big rich counties, and people are surprised to see that. But so part of my call to go deeper is a call to say, enough. Why is the richest country tolerating this map which won't budge when we know how to help? And so I think the first point about going deeper is to wrap our arms more seriously, to engage more seriously with our communities, with sisters, brothers, moms, dad, that we know don't have to live like this. This is frustrating that we have to have such high levels of poverty. And what is matching that is not only people's income, but wealth and a lack of investment in deep community facilities. So the things we would all want to thrive in, and whether that's better health care centers, better housing. So that to me is CDFI work. So my first definition of Go Deeper, Crystal, does echo the work of the Partners for Rural Transformation. And it is a call to say, let's be serious about the kinds of funding and work we can pull. And I am very thankful for the OFN board. When I first put this out, I thought folks would be more concerned. You know, we're a national organization, there's poverty everywhere, it's not all persistent, there's urban communities, people are all over. But people understood, and even some of those billion-dollar CDFIs understood, and they have been powerful partners to the work in persistent poverty. So to me, it's a call. It's a call to get serious with the places that have been the most left out. And let's face it, so much of the growth in our work came from finding smart partners like banks who had CRA obligations. Well, that doesn't marry up very well with many of the communities who greatly need the kind of investments. So if you were fortunate enough to be in a community with a smart philanthropic sector who could see you, who was interested in it, or with a banking sector that had an obligation and an interest, you did better in accumulating those kind of dollars that would move along. If you didn't, not for any other reason than spatially, that just wasn't your footprint. And we know we've been on a contraction of banks, not an expansion. So my call of go deeper does start with persistent poverty, and let's all lean in and try to deepen the partnerships about that. I think if I'm also being honest though, the deeper is not only about census tracts. It's also to say, what can we do on the risk curve as CDFIs that takes us deeper into the pain that we know our communities are feeling? How can we innovate to have the deepest impact we can possibly have? And I'm doing this not just because I like to see more risk in the portfolio, but I'm doing it because I think the reward of this is the deeper impact. And I think that is where we will be rewarded by new investors, new government funds. I think when we choose to go deeper, no matter where we are geographically, but when we choose to lean in harder, to find what's harder, to finance, to not accept whatever the latest, I said, I'm always in a battle with my friends who are economists because they always take the top line macro data and give me a bad story. And I'm always saying, all right, that's the data, but we're going to look deeper. So I think that's what I mean, Crystal, that both, I think we should be intolerant as CDFIs about the divergent ability of funds that have not reached in our persistent area. And I think that intolerance should drive us to do more. And then no matter where we're sitting, I think we should go deeper in the way we construe our impact, the way we've decided to take on more risk, the demands we should put to our capital providers to join us with the right mix so that we can take those risks. And that to me is summed up in a very simple phrase, go deeper. So yeah.
I love that, Lisa, thank you. Another thing I'd like to pick your brain about, I do know when you came on to OFN, you did a site visit tour, for lack of a better word, and you brought a lot of your staff, different staff members that maybe are doing the work but never have really seen how this works in a community, and bringing them to rural, urban, native. So from your staff, and you have a wonderful staff that you were able to bring on to native CDFI site visits, I know that was very profound and very impactful for them to see the impact in the lending and really the unity that we find when we've got sound financial systems that typically have not been available for a lot of communities. So I just wonder how and what do you find poignant in this moment with native CDFIs, our work, especially in light of COVID, and any differences that you find with your vast knowledge and relationships of all different tiers of our industry. Just to hear a little bit of your thoughts on that, I think would be really.
I love that invitation to speak about the poignancy. And it is killing me that we can't be together physically right now. because getting out and having a real experience of witnessing what others see every day when they wake up there's just no substitute for it. So someday we'll be off Zoom and we won't have to do this like this, but your word poignancy is really good. I think the first poignant moment was COVID, and because it's a health crisis that just ravaged anybody with a pre-existing condition or with a weaker healthcare system. It just so unfairly struck into the hearts of Native communities as well as others, but I'm going to speak about Native communities. And so what was poignant is witnessing, and this was on Zoom or on TV, or seeing stats, or seeing worse health outcomes, seeing a crisis that just seemed so brutal. And I think, we have shared tears about that. That is so unfathomable to be in this country that, we've had to tolerate, losing our fellow citizens for something that could be helped at least by better medical facilities. That's sad, and underlying health. But I think the other part of poignancy for me is the power of the Native CDFIs. It's actually hard to see when you're just being bombarded with the negative, sad stories. And this is where I think I just wish I could bring more people with me on site visits and on seeing, because I think that what's also poignant is seeing how close we are, seeing how many people have really come into this field. Who's leading all these Native funds? What's their life story? Why did they decide to go back home, move to do this kind of work? And it's very poignant to me. We have leaders in place, leaders who felt this pull to come now. And it is very much, to me, one of the reasons why I believe Native CDFIs are poised to do more right now. And I think it's harder to see when you're just kind of buried in stats and big things. So shout outs to the sponsors of this event, to God bless the beautiful Northwest Area Foundation, who never gives up on amplifying the voices of actual Native communities and speaking to philanthropy directly about the power of that. To me, that's the poignant moment. It's harder to see the hope. I keep saying to people, Native communities, Native CDFI work is one of my favorite examples. Because when people say, the minority businesses are just out of cash, it's just over, let me show you my stat. I keep saying, Ted Piccolo and I had sandwiches together when I went to Washington State. And I keep thinking about the sandwich shop in the Native, in the tribal headquarters that we went to. It was run by one of Ted's borrowers. And I keep thinking, why would that sandwich shop stay out of business, like forever? Like, it doesn't have to. Like, it's going to come back. Like, there's hope for this. Not every business has to go. And guess who will know when to put that financing in? Like, this is kind of the beauty of being a small economy and knowing your constituents so well. Dan Latondra at Bank of America calls it being hyper local, really understanding your clients. And it's poignant to me that I'm pointing out, look, everything is not going to go down, or it will know how to recover, even if we've had to put a lock on the door and say, for now we're staying home so we can keep people alive. But at some point the locks will come off the doors, and yes, we will have lunch again, And I keep thinking, it's not like you have 500 choices to have lunch. There was one place to have lunch, you know. So I just keep, to me, it's poignant because I don't think we can see all the hope. You know, it's like, Crystal, I've said to you, I've had to say to funders before who have questioned really what's the value of CDFIs, you know, why do you need it? And I've had to say, who else is going to build those homes on native reservation lands? Who's going to push for home ownership? Who's coming? You know, that's not some development opportunity that's being seized by others, you know, and yet the need is clear. And there are people who can pay a mortgage, and my bet's on CDFIs. So I am, it is poignant to me that I'm sitting here having to make this argument in 2020 about the skills that are existent in our CDFIs, the wisdom, the smarts about their localities. One of the reasons I love rural communities is that it's sort of hard to hide. Everybody knows everybody and everybody's business. And so, and that can be a useful credit tool. I mean, can't be biased, but we know something, and we want our communities to thrive. So that's poignant to me, Crystal. I wish there were, while the sadness is there, I wish there were more opportunities to explain why we must hope and fund. I mean, this stuff's not over. And I walk around and I say, oh, I see why a $5 million increase in a single fund would be a huge boost. And I'm just going to keep shouting that. So COVID and beyond. So
you gave me a wonderful conduit to my last question, and you didn't even know it. So thank you there, Lisa. One thing, and one last thing I'd really like to discuss, because we've had very in-depth conversations just on a personal level, and I really find your viewpoint heartening in regards to CDFIs, and more so looking at CDFIs that have a lower asset base, or smaller balance sheet. So within the venues of CDFI industry, we know that there's so many tiered systems. So we have larger community facilities lenders that are, accessing funding, tax credits, mid-tier, and, smaller revolving loan funds. And sometimes it's harder to scale, obviously. It's harder to receive that extra capital support that we need to scale, but no less have incredible impact. One of my favorite stories just back home, and I'm sure that all of you, I've been talking, probably stating it for like 10 years, so you'll be like, not the story again, Crystal, but I am gonna just give one of the smaller stories, and looking at how we really change the economic landscape of our communities. And that is through capital, and that is through capacity building, the base measures of financial education, and really strengthening the financial fabric in a manner that's culturally relevant and respectful. And we've shown that that can be done. Our native CDFI industries have been doing this 2 decades. I recall a time when our financial education courses in the Turtle Mountain CDFI in Belcourt, North Dakota, the Turtle Mountain Reservation, I founded a CDFI many years ago, 2004 or 2005, I believe. So as we started providing capacity building services and kind of word spread, we've got consumer loans, small business loans. A lot of people came in. Number one, we made financial literacy a prerequisite prior to attaining any of our larger loans. But I remember in particular this one woman, and she came in, and again, we're a small community, so we all know each other. And she didn't come back after taking a financial literacy course for a consumer building loan, for a small business loan, and indicated she really was just trying to find the tools that she needed to manage her personal budget. She was a single mother of 4 children, and she also had her parents living with her, and she was the sole income provider of her family. So she came in, took the courses. I didn't see her probably until about 3 years later. I mean, we did see each other, not necessarily speak, and she stopped me in a grocery store. And she told me, Crystal, you would be so proud. And I was like, why is that? She had saved and now had $5,000 in a savings account. So based on, her managing her money differently. She needed a hand up in capacity building, didn't necessarily come for additional lending services, but that changed somebody's life to such a huge extent that sometimes it didn't matter who revolved through our doors as a CDFI. We know that we are providing life-changing skills, life-changing opportunities for capital. Sometimes that we're able to assess that, and sometimes not necessarily. So rounding back to my question, what do you think the significance and the value is of funds, let's say with balance sheets under $10 million? And how do you frame that in relation to the rest of the CDFI industry in regards to impact, what we do in relation to, the different tiers, because our industry is so diverse in those measures?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. The value of our many CDFIs who have assets under 10 million. I spent my first year here going and visiting many of our CDFIs who have assets under 10 million and trying to understand their place in the ecosystem, because as I've mentioned, I started in this field over 35 years ago. And everybody was under 10 million then, I think. but one of my absolute heroes in this field is the late Jeremy Nowak, who said, we must grow, change, or die. And Jeremy had a lot of wisdom, and growth and change does help you to not perish. And the scaling of this industry has had amazing benefits and has given people power to withstand crises, to have more partners, to go to the capital markets. So growth, yes, has its absolute benefits, and it has benefited our whole industry to have institutions that are over 100 million in assets and beyond. And of course, with those assets comes eventually a greater ability to be self-sustaining in your activities. So we know that. And so, but what is the value of all of us who are under 10 million? Well, I think many under 10 million have reached levels of self-sufficiency because of the way they've construed balance sheets with heavy net assets, with portfolios that perform, with the kind of services that pay. But the power that I really see is a power to match your moment. There's an entire microfinance field outside of the US that just boomed on tiny loans and shocked the world. That's why Yunus, and now we know Bill Clinton had something to do with Muhammad Yunus's Nobel Peace Prize. But we've learned that the size of the asset doesn't just dictate the power and impact of the loan. We've learned that, and we've learned that globally. It's one of the big lessons of our century. But for me, the significance, and it's great that your story pointed out capital, and capacity, and financial education as being three hallmarks of things that CDFIs do, and that all of those are important. My feeling is that our institutions that run rock solid portfolios that are smaller know what they're doing. And, if they don't, they probably had to merge or, not survive in their current way. But their boards, their investment committees, I was seeing Mountain BizWorks in Asheville. They're under 10 million. They know what they're doing in the 20 counties in northwestern North Carolina. They know what they're doing. I've seen the native funds. I've seen. They know what they're doing. They know who they're targeting. And I think we need to give some space for these funds to be the successful hyper-local funds. And I think the push to me at an intermediary level is to let's figure out a way to help more. Not everybody can go and issue a bond that is an S&P rated bond. And that's actually not the way markets work. There are ways to group and give services to a group. Not every store is Walmart, you know. So I think the push is back to some of us who are sitting at intermediary spots to say, how do we help the fund that's under 10 million, but knows what they're doing, knows who their clients are, knows, Crystal, that your ability to coach could have significant impacts, whether or not that yields a capital opportunity or not. You know, I think the push is, how do we keep this family together? And how do we make sure that, you know, nobody will survive if you lose your entire book. And so I'm not advocating for lending that isn't grounded. What I am saying is that the size of the capital portfolio, we've seen wise choices being made by small funds for the localities that they serve. And I think it's on us, leaders, intermediaries, to figure out the supports that help smaller funds, yes, become more efficient, yes, get better partners, yes, figure out a way to link up to bigger sources of capital that aren't so brutally hard to reach. I mean, that's kind of why OISTA was formed. So what I think is that growth has helped us, but there's wisdom to our place, and that there are choices individual CDFIs have made that make entire sense in the marketplace. And my job is to help figure out how to keep those resources flowing to those who are smaller. So I'm proud that we've got, I think some of our wonderful work is being done by smaller CDFIs, and I think the fight is worth it.
Thank you for that, Lisa. I'm looking at our clock. It's 3:24. We have a little bit of time left. So I would like to, number one, just get clarification in regards to OFN membership, Lisa, and for those native CDFIs on the line, it's rolling open applications. There's not a certain time if individuals are interested or not, and enrolling for membership. So correct? Anytime if you're
You can come at
interested?
any point.
Wonderful.
Our board shifted it, so we want people even at earlier stages to come on board. So send us an email, and Seth Julian, our Executive Vice President for membership, just hop on the ofn.org website and you'll see us there. It'd be great. Yeah, let's share.
And then I'm going to also implore all of our native CDFIs, all of our native CDFI leaders, again, following on Lisa's initial comment, we have 3 board seats open this year for the OFN board, and I would really implore, if you have any questions, please call me, but I would really love to see that we continue a native presence in this regard within national leadership, so please think about it. They're very accommodating in regards to managing your schedules and your time. And for me, I was terrified. It's not as terrifying as you may think it may be. So if that gives any help or accord in that measure. And what I'd like to do is, we still have about 43 attendees, so that's amazing. I'd like to take these last 5 minutes if needed. And if any of you have a particular question of Lisa in regards to OFN operations, lending opportunities, policy measures. This woman's time is so valuable, so thank you so much. I know how incredibly busy you are at OFN, so taking the time today to speak with us, we're very incredibly pleased and honored to have you. But I'd like to see if anybody had any questions of Lisa or OFN, because it's a perfect time to be able to get those answered while we have a couple of minutes left. And we'll just wait for the chat box, Lisa. We'll see if some things come up. No pressure on that regard either.
And this is why I have my job. So this is not a distraction. This is a joy to join you, and very appreciative.
I don't know if we have any questions, but I would be interested in regards to, oh, somebody may have one. Steph, did somebody end up raising their hand or not necessarily? No? Okay. Um, in regards to new policy measures we should be aware of.
Nice way to close, yeah.
Yes, I know that we work very, very closely with NCN, Native CDFI Network, and they've done a great job of really vamping up what those are. But do you have any particular things for us to be apprised of, or things that we can help not only OFN but our industry and Native communities have a larger voice to make some policy change?
Well, first, thank you. I think most people are active with Jackson and the team at the Native CDFI Network, and I think voice matters. I say we do money, strength, and voice as our three things as an intermediary, and voice matters. When we started this year, it was all about CRA and the proposed modernization that we really worried and would adversely affect us. We still worry about that. We take some comfort that that all of our pushing has caused the Federal Reserve to wait. And so the three groups, FDIC, OCC, and Federal Reserve, were not unified in their proposal for. So that it is still there. And, you know, the fact that CRA funds have been so important to us, I would say stay active with us, with other networks. This fight isn't over for the obligations that the business community and our banks have. In fact, the opposite is happening. You have people calling for more business contributions, and we should be joined in that fight.
I do see a question, Lisa. Somebody did pipe in when you're talking about CRAs, and they want to know what's the next steps with proposed CRA amendments.
Yeah, that is, I mean, the OCC has spoken. They've put out a reg. So that will take some time to be implemented, and there's an election. So we'll see. But the other agencies have not finalized, FDIC or Federal Reserve. So there isn't a clear next step. I would just say keep pressure on, and you know, this is kind of an interesting last 6 months of the year. Keep watching. The other thing that's going on right now, though, is the normal appropriations process and the policy push for more COVID response. And in both, we are trying to seek greater resources for CDFIs. And most of you have heard all of the CDFI networks joined together and asked for $1 billion of emergency funding as part of a response to COVID-19, of stimulus to go to increased FA awards. That would be such a huge boon. We've never had that level of appropriation, and to do that rapidly would be important. The other thing that's going on, though, is a call to increase the normal appropriation. It's been zeroed out in the Trump administration's budgets, but Congress has steadily increased those funding in a bipartisan way. And the House is in markup right now, I think, for their side of the bill. Senate, we're not quite sure when they'll come together. But I think what we should be unified in saying the country needs us. And this little FA award budget, the CDFI fund that most understands us, has had its appropriation kind of plateaued for a long time. And we've been thankful that it didn't go to zero, but it's been plateaued. So I think that fight is still on, and it's a good fight. And I feel very unified with Jackson, with WISTA in that fight. So stay with us.
We keep trying for that $1 billion CDFI appropriation.
Yes.
So I guess we can go down fighting for that. Well, we are at time, a minute over. I'll try not to bring you all on Indian time with us here. I really appreciate all of you joining. Again, thanks to our funders, our staff, our partners, constituents, and I really love the last term of constant believers. For those that support in one way or another, monetarily developing new relationships, that really has helped us broaden our own tent as Native CDFIs, and we're really looking forward to broadening more and being able to develop those relationships. So for one and all, again, prayers of health and safety to you all, to your families, to your communities. Prayers for us all as we go through these growing pains of recognizing white supremacy and the ladders in which America was really built. And I know I wouldn't necessarily say difficult, and I'm not demeaning the Black Lives Matter, so you know, movement by any means necessary. But I do find when we're coming up and we're talking about colonialism and we're talking about the great injustices, sometimes it's a little frustrating, I think, on our part as Native nations that we haven't dug a little bit deeper or go deeper, as Lisa indicates, to talk about, you know, America was really, you know, discovered and founded on a theft of land, you know, mass genocide, and so many other measures until we get to point. So for every marginalized community, for all of our ancestors that had the bravery to survive, and we can all be standing here today, as we look at what we really want America to look like, and we really want to see that inclusiveness, keep fighting the good fight in whatever measure that is. And some of the best measures are just continuing to do the work we do each and every day and broaden our voice in that regard. So for those that are experiencing the pain, I know that it's very hard to watch the news all day long and in one sense or another. We're really at a tipping point within America, but I really think this can end up in a positive measure to where we're actually honest and true to ourselves as a nation, as a country, and have the opportunity to maybe build stronger foundations. And with our work that we do as CDFIs, Native CDFIs, we're on the platform to doing that already. So with that, again, such an unprecedented time of uncertainty, but it was so good to be able to see your faces, see your background, see your kids running back and forth, actually, you know, behind things, and having us have the opportunity to just be people and support each other these last 3 days. So again, for all of your time, Chimi Gwich, and we look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Love.